The table saw is one of the most used tools in my shop, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to make 3 different jigs to use on it. The first one is a jig to rip thin strips down. The second one is a classic crosscut sled, and then the third is a miter sled that will get you those perfect 45s. The first one is a jig for ripping thin strips over at the table saw. It can be a little hairy ripping thin strips down because you have to get the fence so close to the blade. This jig completely simplifies the task, keeping your hands and the fence well away from the blade, but still giving you those nice thin strips. It doesn't really matter what width or length you make this jig. However, it'll make your life easiest to do math if you make the width of it an even number. I made my board 4 inches wide. And then for the little shoe, you want to make it the same height as the jig, and then I made mine 1/4 of an inch. You don't want any fasteners in this shoe because it is sacrificial, meaning you're going to run it through the blade and then eventually replace it whenever it gets too chewed up. So instead of screws, I'm using a quick setting wood glue. So I went to my junk drawer of hardware and pulled out a miscellaneous drawer pull handle that I have and attached it to the front. Well, not the front, I guess it would be the top. And that completes jig number 1, so it's dead simple. And now we're actually going to use this jig to help us make the second jig, which is a crosscut sled. The second jig is going to be a crosscut jig. Whenever you're at the table saw, you have 2 different cuts. You can either make a ripping cut, which goes with the grain, or you can make a crosscut, which goes across it. Something dangerous with making a crosscut at the table saw is if you're using the fence and the board is longer than it is wide, it can get a little bit wonky on you, and that's what creates the kickback and a dangerous situation. By using a crosscut sled, you can nix using the fence and then only use the sled to push it through at an exact 90. So that's what we're going to be making. With a crosscut sled, it not only gives you much larger capacity, but it also has 2 runners, making it much more stable and ensuring a 90-degree cut. With that, it's very important that you get these runners with no slop in it. So I'm going to start off making these runners slightly large and then sneak up on the cut. These runners need to be just slightly under the height of the table. So now I'm going to rip them down. And these are just to prop up these runners so that they're above the level of the table saw right now. You can apply a little bit of super glue to the top of the runners and then place the base of the sled on top of it. And this is a way to just temporarily hold the 2 together so that you can pop it out and then countersink and attach it with screws from the bottom side. Yeah. Now we can raise the blade up and cut halfway through the sled and then attach the leading fence. It's not critical that this leading fence be square or straight. Its main job is to keep the sled together since there's a big cut right down the center. You want to raise the blade up high enough so that you can set the fence up against the blade and not the teeth. Then you can square the back fence up to the blade itself. However, it's not exactly crucial that this is square. It mainly just supports the sled, but if you can get it square, then why not? I want to again use a quick setting wood glue here so that I can just hold it temporarily and then secure it permanently with screws. The front fence on the crosscut sled is the important one because it's what's going to reference your material to the blade at an exact 90. This back fence is the important one to make sure that it's at a 90 in reference to the blade because it's what's going to square up your material when you want an absolute dead 90 cut. To do this, I'm going to flush it up with my hand and then I'm going to pull it back and only put in 1 screw in order to create a pivot point. By having 1 screw in, it creates a pivot point so that I have some adjustment and can square it up to the blade. After getting the fence set to an exact 90, you can move it forward, being careful not to move it, and then finish securing it with screws. Then you can always double check it. Looks great. This isn't absolutely necessary, but another safety feature you can install is a chunkier piece of block right where the blade comes through. Just in case your hands are ever in the wrong place, the blade will get buried into the block and you have a little bit more of a safer buffer. Now keep in mind that this is a bare bones crosscut sled that you can make in under 30 minutes. There are a ton of features that you can add on to it, such as a built-in stop block as an example that will make the sled even more functional. However, if you want to just get going, then this is a great starter. Also keep in mind you can make this however big or small you need it. All right, and the third and final jig is going to be a miter saw sled. This is a jig to help you make perfect 45-degree cuts or miters anytime. Yes, I have a miter saw. However, no matter how great quality your miter saw is, it will never compete with the accuracy that a miter saw sled on a table saw can give you. And I'm just making this base as big as this piece of scrap. The beginning steps are almost identical to the crosscut sled. You need a base and you also need a few runners. So if you're going to be making multiple jigs in the same time frame, you can go ahead and cut all of your parts at the same time to eliminate resetting your fence. A lot of people use hardwood to make the runners. However, I'm using plywood. Both are acceptable options. However, for the base, I would recommend using MDF or plywood, but MDF has the advantage of staying more flat. Flatter? Flatter longer. It likes to stay flat. It's easier to stay flat. To make the fencing for the miter saw sled, I needed 2 pieces of ply glued together. Well, sticking with my scrap theme, I already have 2 pieces of 3/4 inch walnut glued together, so that's what I'm using. Now I'm going to turn my saw on and push the sled base about halfway through. Next, I'm going to take something that I know is at a 45-degree angle. In this case, it's going to be my speed square, and reference off the blade. Again, making sure that I'm on the blade itself and not its teeth, and then draw a 45-degree pencil mark. Now I can take my glued together fence material and glue it as close to this line as I can get it. You want this to hang over your kerf line so that after you secure it in place, you can run the sled through the table saw blade and cut it at an exact 90. Now I'm going to raise up the blade and cut all the way through this first fence. Now I can set the second fence on top of the first and then use the table saw to make its cut. Now I can apply glue to the bottom of the second fence and then use an accurate 90-degree angle to line it up to the first. You should only be concerned with getting the outside at a perfect 90, not this actual miter cut right here. Then you can flip it over and secure it to the bottom with screws. You just need to make sure when you're cutting 2 pairing miters that you use one fence to make one of the miters and then the other fence to make its pair. This way, regardless of the slight degree it's out from 45 from the blade, it'll still match up to 90 if this outside face is at a 90. Okay, and that's gonna be it for this video. Now keep in mind that these are bare bone sleds just to get you going. I will leave you a link to a playlist down in the description to other Woodworker videos so that you can see other cool add-ons if you wanna upgrade your sleds and jigs a little bit further. I hope that this video has helped you out. If you would like a free set of plans for all 3 of these jigs, then that is also linked for you down below. I will see you on my next project. All right, I gotta clean this up. This is embarrassing. It's a little bit tight. Does that make sense? Well, you don't know what it does, so sorry, not insulting, but I'm asking the wrong person. Nice. Hold on.